suggestions for what else they'd like to see at future meetings. So with that, first of all, we do know that we may be joined by some other counselors, and we will let you know about that. But we would like to welcome Andy Steinberg, who just went off the council this last year as an at-large counselor. And Angela Mills, who is with the town manager's office and is greatly assisting us this evening, although she's welcome to leave anytime so she doesn't spend her evening this way. We're going to start with what are the council committees focusing on? And GOL is actually one that both Amber and I are part of. So, Amber, why don't you start since you're the vice chair of that committee?
Yes. So GOL stands for, Lynn, you're gonna have to help me. It's governance,
Organization and
organization, and
legislation.
legislation. And so I'm, as a newer counselor, getting myself acclimated to this committee. It's a very nerdy committee, so everything comes to us before it goes to the council to make sure that it is clear, consistent, and actionable. And there's also times when we are asked to review things that, may be coming before the council, like a proclamation or a resolution or a bylaw, and also review it in terms of content. So we sort of play a dual role when we are asked to make recommendations about the content as well. So some of the things we've done so far this year, well, we created a brand new charge for a brand new committee. We are actually going to be reviewing all of our town bylaws. I think it's an also every 10-year process. Am I right, Lynn?
Yes.
And yeah, so we are going to be looking for volunteers for a new committee that has the charge of reviewing all of our bylaws. So that is going to be a huge piece of work coming just on the heels of our charter review. And also another huge piece of work that we will have this year is the Resident Oversight Board, which came about as one of the recommendations of the CSWG, this Community Safety Working Group, was to create an oversight board for our police department. And there are two different sort of ways that we could go in terms of how that will look. So there's kind of two proposals that we will be looking at as GOL and making a recommendation to the council for the council to vote on. We're also currently updating the Human Rights Commission bylaw to make it more in line with what the Human Rights Commission is actually doing in practice. And, we've had a lot of proclamations and resolutions come before us. Most recently, the resolution on holding ICE accountable when it breaks the law, which I will talk about a bit more later. So that is some of the things. Oh, and we have, as a result of our charter review, GOL will also be looking at about 9 to 10 different recommendations for changing our charter to bring a recommendation back to the council. And I will review those with you all once we get to that piece of the agenda.
Great.
What we're doing.
Um, so one of the nice things this last year was I've now returned to the Finance Committee. I was off it for 1 year, but I'm back on. And as you can well imagine, we're gearing up for the annual budget process. The budget process actually started back in November when we started receiving citizens and residents recommendations for things they'd like to see in the budget this year. It continues on by the end of March, April 1st, actually, the town manager will have received both the budgets from the two different school districts, the regional school district and the elementary school district, and he will have received the Jones Library budget. The town manager then puts the budget together along with all the town um, departments as well and makes a recommendation to the council on May 1st. At that point, it gets referred to the Finance Committee, and the Finance Committee spends the month of May meeting twice a week, looking at the various pieces of the budget in much greater detail and meeting with department heads and other staff as appropriate. And then by the 1st of June, it must bring their recommendation for the budget back to the council. And the council spends the month of June holding various hearings or public forums, particularly around capital expenditures and the budget in general. So that's part of the piece that's going on. This year, the schools have also held public forums, and we did have a four towns meeting on the regional budget, which at this point seems to be pretty acceptable to all four towns. But we'll see as it comes forward. They met last night, and the elementary budget will be finished before the end of the next week. So, and then let me just mention CRC, Community Resources Committee, is getting ready to advance the solar bylaw that they've been working on, which also includes pieces around the whole issue of storage and so forth. I'd like to welcome Council President Mandy Jo Haneke, who's also a I'm sorry, a townwide counselor. Hi, Mandy. And Mandy, you're on CRC. So if you want
Yes.
to chime in and tell us a little bit more about CRC, I've mentioned the solar bylaw, and I know you worked on that. And then I assume the downtown design standards will be going to CRC.
Um, yeah, I don't want to take over the meeting and I'm sorry I'm late. But yeah, clean energy should be coming to, which is what solar bylaw is now called, because it deals with both solar and battery energy storage. We have put both of them into the bylaw right now. And it should be coming to the council in late April. To get referred for planning board and CRC hearings. So that is exciting. And then it will go through the typical zoning bylaw hearing process. The goal is to adopt by early September because by state regulation and law, the towns must start accepting consolidated permits under the law on October 1. So the goal is to have the bylaw in effect by October 1, which means it needs adopted at least 14 days prior. So that's that. Yeah, CRC is also going to be looking at some point downtown design standards if there are zoning bylaw requested changes that eventually accompany them, that would come to CRC. And next meeting, I think we're actually looking at just an overview of them in an upcoming
Let
meeting.
me also mention, although we will be making a bigger plug later, and that is that CRC also accepts applications for both zoning board and for zoning board of appeals and planning board. And that is an active solicitation at this point, along with all of our many other committees. And they interview them and then make a recommendation to the council. TSO, Town Services and Outreach, is actually focusing on waste hauler. There's a consultant that's been hired, and the goal there is to develop the specifications in the RFP. We have established a transportation and parking commission, which is meeting for the first time around now. And they will actually be picking up many of the issues related to roads and sidewalks and parking in town. And then in addition to that, TSO has also been given a couple of the pieces of the charter review, particularly those that deal with community engagement. So, and we want to thank Andy Steinberg, who's with us because he chaired TSO for many, many years, it seems. Are there any questions about council committee focus? Use the raised hand function if you would like. Okay, seeing none, we're going to go on. We did talk about the budget process. It's long and complicated, but I can send you various documents about it as well. As you know, I just want to mention this year that one of the major strains that not only Amherst is under, but many, many towns, cities and towns across the Commonwealth, and that is the minimal increase in funding for schools. And that is creating enormous strain on our school budgets. It's causing everybody, 211 cities and towns, mostly smaller towns and municipalities, to really have to look at tough budgets. And so, I mean, you just read the local paper or read the Boston paper, and you can constantly see articles about this. It's leading many towns to consider overrides. And we have just appointed two new people to the Finance Committee, and one of them is somebody who really follows the school budgets very closely. So, charter review, Amber?
Yeah, and just to add on the school funding issue, the person that Lynn is referring to, her name is Kathleen Mitchell, and she's also the sort of de facto leader of a group called Save Our Schools Amherst, which is very active and does a lot of education work around school budgets. And so I would definitely recommend for folks who are on Instagram, follow SOS. There's also a website for more information and more, just information about how you can advocate for the school budget. So just putting in a plug for that. And I'm so glad we have Kathleen joining
Yeah,
finance.
absolutely. Great choice.
Yeah, she knows more about budget than I do. And if I ever have questions, I go to Kathleen, and I hope that she can share her knowledge with many more. So let's talk a bit about the charter review process. Folks familiar with that was happening? Just, thumbs up if you've heard of it, like never heard of it before, thumbs down. Okay, so I got some thumbs up. Darcy Dumont, I know you know what that is. She's hiding. So the charter review process, it's something that we do, according to our charter, every 10 years, starting in the year 2024. And so the process of reviewing the charter was started that year. And I'm just going to show a few slides. I don't want to overwhelm folks. There is a longer slide presentation on this, but I'm just going to show you a few of those slides. Lynn, can you see my screen okay?
I can.
Okay. So this is just, here's why we're doing this. The committee charge was, what we're looking at. So we're getting, the committee had to look at public input on potential improvements and provide a report to the council. There were 9 very hardworking members of this committee chosen by the town council. They worked very hard to put together this report, and the report was presented in early January. And so we as a council had to act on it within 90 days, which we have, and I'll explain that in a moment. So if folks would like to know what the charter review process found, there is this QR code will lead you to a slideshow that is much more in depth than what I'm going to cover. And I think we can also throw a link to that in the chat in a moment. But I'm just going to go over sort of the basics. I know this doesn't look basic, but there's 22 recommendations, and we had to figure out, okay, what are we going to do with them, right? So we have some of them, if you see on the left, are things that we call, we'll go what we call a special act, right? So we send that to the legislature. We're going to have our attorneys draft language for the charter, and then we send that to the legislator to ask it to be passed by special act. And so if you look at sort of what's on that list, most of it pertains to definitions and things that could just be clarified, like fairly simple changes. You'll see that, in terms of participation, we are increasing district meetings to 3 per year instead of 2. So you'll be seeing us more if you want to. And also, we talked about having the voter veto signature period go from 14 to 21 days. So if the voters want to veto something passed by the council, there's now 21 days to get the signatures once this passes. So that's going directly to be drafted as language. If you look at what's on the right, that's stuff that needs more work, needs to cook a little bit more, I would say. So that's the things I mentioned that are going to GOL. So we're going to be talking about those items in terms of like, is this something we can do by just making it a procedural rule, or does it need to go to the charter? And if it does go to the charter, like what do we want the language to be? And so we're going to make recommendations to the council on those items. And then there was also recommendations that were more pertaining to finance, like wanting to have more information and more earlier public forums on the budget so that people can be more active in, forming the budget and the budget process in our town. Um, and then the only one that we tabled was requiring resident members on the finance committee. We decided to keep our current process in which we do have resident members on the finance committee, but we're not requiring it. So that's kind of a summary. Again, I'm going to share the link to the report if folks want to read more about, what we decided to do with these recommendations. And then finally, I'm going to take that down because there's one more slide that I want to share. And that is one really great thing that the charter committee did was it looked at, what can we do beyond the charter, right? So, there's a lot of really great recommendations that the committee made. I'm going to scroll down. So these are the 22 that we've already acted on as a council. And then we have beyond the charter. So you got, all kinds of things like structural issues, like, people, saying things like, hey, like we'd like to have a mayor council form of government, or we want a smaller council. So these are like major structural issues that would require a new charter practically. So those are things that would fall under, perhaps having a public dialogue about, how folks feel about that first. And then we have public engagement issues. So these are things that we can do, probably most of them without actually changing the charter, but it would help us to engage people more in the town government. So those are things that we're looking at. And Mandy Jo, who is on the call, has done a great job of leading us through this report and like helping us figure out how we can take action on the different elements in a timely fashion. And so now we're really going to be diving into this beyond the charter stuff and figure out how we can best implement many of these changes and recommendations. And it is a matter, like we've been calling it sort of like the air traffic control process of like what committee can best, be effective in making a change on this particular item. And so we've done that for the 22 basic recommendations, and now we're going into beyond the charter. And what else would I say about that? Anything else, Lynn?
Yeah, let me just mention that some of the ones that we are sending off to our attorney for language, it's to get language that we would then go to the legislature. They would agree that we can put it on our ballot. The earliest that anybody will see it on the ballot is in the fall of 2027. And if there's any other significant changes, one of which we discussed the other night, and that's trying to figure out, is there language that can allow us to go ahead and implement ranked choice voting without having to go through the special act of the legislature, and a couple others as well. So it's really a complicated process of going through all of these recommendations. We did do it within the time frame in terms of disposing how we would deal with them. And again, thanking Mandy Johanicky for guiding us through, and I call this mishmash of recommendations, but I mean that very, very positively, and want to thank the Charter Commission for the unbelievably good work that they did and the many ways in which they listened to the public. Are there questions about the charter review process? Glad to see a few pleased hands. Um, One of the things, by the way, is the idea of having more district meetings. In the past, we've usually had at least 3 anyway, and we're glad to have as many district meetings as you want to have. So the next item is roads, potholes, mailboxes, street poles, and lights. And what we want to do is, I will just tell you, both Amber and I have been compiling lists from people who have given them to us. We have been sharing those lists with the town manager. I see Eric Einhorn on here. And Eric, I think this year you'll get a new pole finally for your light on Fox Lane. We also have a variety of different lights that are out. And one of the things that has been the problem there has been the truck that's used to elevate people up so that they can change lights was broken, and now it's either been replaced or we have a new one. In addition to that, uh, you said you had a QRS code for the road thing. Do you want to put that in the chat, or do you want to show something, Amber?
I will do, let me put it in the chat for folks.
Okay,
And you can see the memo that Paul presented to us on the
right. So in the town manager's goals this year, uh, actually in last year as well, was to present a multi-year plan for the improvement of our roads, because we can't even make excuses for them. They're abysmal, they're a mess, and they're not getting any better, and they aren't going to get any better until we can start patching them, which we're trying to do a little bit here of some of the worst ones, but even then the patches come up given how hard it rains and stuff like that. The goal is, however, to lay out a 5-year plan so that we actually can catch up. And this year, I believe the plan that we're going to be seeing later, I believe in April, is one where we're going to focus a little more on some of the side roads that are in really bad shape. And some of them, frankly, they're in District 2. We'll talk later on about Heatherstone specifically and the roundabouts, but the part of Heatherstone that was never paved, and the whole part of Gatehouse Road that has consistently been a problem, is high on our list of District 2 issues. So we're collecting our list. Grantwood is another place that's high on that list. And all of us have had different meetings at different times on that. But what I want to make sure you do is if you have a specific request for a light that's out, for a road, don't forget to use See-Click Fix and report it, because it's only once it's reported that people can actually start the countdown to have it repaired. And if it's reported and you hit it and it does damage to your car, you actually can make a claim. So, but it has to have been reported. So make sure that you report potholes. So please make sure, and I do know I've gotten complaints from a couple people because of our incredible snow this season. The plows have taken down a couple mailboxes and damaged others. And so the town is looking to how to replace those mailboxes. But if you have a specific request, please contact Amber and me both, and we'll add it to the list of the many, many, many lights, light poles, etc., that are on the list. Are there questions or comments about that particularly? Yes, Mr. Jay?
Yeah, Juliet, I'm sorry.
Hi.
Hi, yeah. Just a quick question, and maybe I could just email you or Amber about roundabouts. Because
Right.
sometimes they get kind of crazy. Like everybody's like, I'm gonna get there first, and boom, 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 boom. They're not taking turns. I thought I maybe I'm mistaken that you get to a roundabout, whoever's there first, like the four-way stop sign. If you're in there, you wait. I mean, if somebody's in there, you wait and you let the person who got first go. Is that correct, or am I?
There is a whole protocol. There is a whole protocol for roundabouts. And one of the things that we feel is missing, particularly for the roundabouts on Heatherstone, is signage that lets people know that if you're not in the circle, you yield to others. And pretty much you use the same protocol you use at stop signs. Person to the right goes, person to, unless you got there first. So it's kind of in the same category for roundabouts. We just We'll get to Heatherstone later because we have had several meetings about Heatherstone, and we want to bring you up to date on our conversations with the town manager on that.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't want to take too much
No,
time.
no problem. Eric,
Thank you.
you need to unmute Eric.
Thank you. I'm glad to see that even the lighting. I remember the town took over the street lights about 30 odd years ago, and it's really gone downhill since there. I mean, they did replace the bulbs with better bulbs, but it, as you were summarizing it really are a lot of lights in many neighborhoods that are out.
Yeah.
But the other question I have is, does when you're building roundabouts and other roadway, how do you decide what's done by the DPW and what's done by outside contractors? It seems to me that it might be more efficient to use more outside contractors and less of our DPW.
I can answer that only to the best of my knowledge, and uh, Mandy Jo, you may have other answers. Angela might even have some answers on this. The big projects are usually done, in other words, resurfacing, et cetera, are usually done by outside contractors. If it's actually pothole repair and the minor ones, those are usually done by our people. Some of it's very much dependent on who has the right equipment. So, for example, if you're going to do a complete dig up the road and replace the whole thing, the town does not have that level of equipment. But on the other hand, if you're going to do potholes, then the town does have. In fact, they got a new piece of equipment just last year, and many people were very pleased with the pothole repair that we had by last fall. But then we had this enormously rough winter, and many, many of those potholes have become exposed again, and they're just, my road's as bad as your road is as bad as the next person's road. There's no excuse for it, except for funds.
Lynn,
Yes.
this is Kirsten Einhorn. Can I just I know that you know that we haven't had a
Yeah.
lamppost for 2 years. I'm not going to drag that up, except for the fact that it has been covered by a large orange and white thing. That has been mangled by the
Yes.
snowplow, and the box underneath it is crooked. And I don't know what that means. I have reported it to the town. I have had no feedback.
And one of your neighbors contacted me recently, yet just 2 days ago, or yes, maybe it was even yesterday. And I have sent that on to the town manager because it seems to me that by not having a cone on it, you could be presenting another danger as well. So
Well,
yes,
the thing is that that huge, ugly cone has been sitting there for 2 years now. And
right,
all it takes is a snowplow or a kid who comes by and removes it.
right.
And I don't know what the danger of that is.
Well, I'm
It
sure,
is a concern of mine.
yeah, I'm sure the wires underneath are not live. They would make sure of that. But it doesn't mean that the hole itself is not properly covered. So we are looking into that. And
Okay.
thank you
Okay.
for bringing it to our attention. Are there other comments or questions about roads? Mailboxes. Again, write us. That's what we're here for. Part of constituent services. It's one of the reasons you have district counselors, is you know who to write. Jacob.
Hi, thanks. I'm wondering, what's the mechanism that road repair is funded by, and how did we get so far behind in the game? It seems like now that you're on the finance committee, that would be a prime thing to start looking at. It also
Um,
seems really ironic to me that uh, the roads are in such bad shape, and the folks that we rely on working on them are the ones without a contract, and they're working in a building which has been, sadly neglected also. So it certainly has a very specific image of what Amherst is like.
So why don't we, Amber, use this opportunity? We'll come back to ICE and talk about DPW and so forth. But let me just talk about road money. Road money comes from a variety of different sources. The state, which is Chapter 90. Last year, for the first time, they actually split the Chapter 90 money so that they did some of it based on population, half, and they did the other half based on road miles. That is to our advantage because the population formula was absolutely not to our advantage. So it has led to a slightly larger state allocation. The rest of the road money, sometimes it does come from special grants. We periodically apply for grants. For instance, for the roundabout on University Drive is a grant that the university and the town jointly applied for. Other times it comes from our own money. And so it's a combination. And what we're trying to do is get a solid figure on what do we actually have in combination, both with grants, with Chapter 90, and with our town money as well. In the most recent allocation of what we call free cash, which is the worst misnomer I've ever heard, because it's not free, but it is cash. It's what you have left at the end of each fiscal year. And then you get to allocate it. Now, we have certain guidelines that require that we keep a certain percentage in reserves, and we also put money into our ongoing capital improvement fund as well. So in the process, we did actually allocate about 2.6 or 7 million more from the free cash this last year toward the roads. And that is the beginning of trying to address this new 5-year plan. Um, Amber has been working very closely with DPW people about the contract, although we want to both be very clear. The town council does not negotiate contracts. We are not authorized to do that. That is the responsibility of the town manager. And then I'll talk about the DPW building, which goes back for me history even before I ever went on the council. So, Amber, you want to talk about DPW contract?
Yeah, I'll just give a brief summary. So I guess it was about, I think early February that the union president came to the council and asked us to to basically be supportive of their union and getting a fair contract. And they were concerned because they had gone into a mediation process which then led to impasse. And once you're in impasse, then you go through a process called fact finding, and basically it's very long and drawn out. And I've been a union person for many years, and I know that's just not a good position to be in, frankly, for either party. So, we myself and a few other counselors asked for a special meeting for the DPW workers to be heard. And, some of the things that they have shared with us, include concerns about the building. We all know they need a new building, but what are the current impacts of them being in that building in the meantime while the new one's being built, with some health and safety hazards that they're facing? And then I think some of the other issues that we really need to look at, as a town and, specifically as a council that's thinking about the budget is, are we budgeting enough for competitive wages? Because of other towns, the problem that we're having is that folks are working in Amherst and they're getting really skilled at their jobs, and they're getting trained up, and then they're leaving us for other positions in other towns where they can make more money. And so we want to stay competitive, and we want to make sure that we have the highly skilled workers that we need. We have a really complicated water system here in Amherst with machinery that it's not a lot of people know how to use or have licenses to use. So retention is really a concern, and we want to make sure that we have a strong contract that, will keep people in our town and keep skilled people in our town. And also that we have, the staffing that we need in our various departments. And so we are having a special meeting on Monday, the 30th at 6:30 if folks want to join or listen or give a public comment. And we're going to be looking at some of these issues in depth and trying to see what we can do as a council. As Lynn said, we don't negotiate the contract, but our job is to fund the contract. So what can we do as a council to help improve the conditions that they're facing? Any questions about that?
Well, I'd just like to point out the town manager who negotiates the contract does report to you. So in a sense,
Yes.
you have a lot of authority over the contract.
We do, but we want to be very clear. There's issues that prevent us from actually being involved in contract negotiations.
Yeah.
So but yes. And there's been some seriously good progress. It's been reported in the newspaper. And beyond that, we really don't know, but there's implications in the newspaper, at least, that we're getting close to a settlement. Please go
Julie,
ahead.
do you have a question?
I had a comment. I don't know. It's a question. Yes. South Amherst Commons, there's a building that used to be part of the school system. I think it's empty. Is that, you don't have to answer now, but I was just thinking maybe that would be a possibility to temporary housing of some of the Department of Public Works while their building is being, renovated or what they need to do. Is there other buildings or that one maybe that could be used as temporary? Let's just throw it out there.
Yeah. Let me jump to the issue of the building itself. The Department of Public Works building and our central fire station are both in pitiful shape. Actually, the Department of Public Works building is in worse shape than even the fire station. And it was originally a trolley barn. I'm hoping that when they actually get around to finally doing something with the property, which we hope is soon, that we can determine whether there really is a trolley buried in the backyard. I've heard various rumors. But in the process, there was first a DPW committee that looked at the potential design for a new building, and then there was a DPW fire station study committee. I actually chaired that prior to going on the council, and even back in 2005 and 6, I chaired the other committee that looked at the fire station. By the way, that was the third committee looking at the central fire station. And we're now in 2026, 20 years later. So in the process, we now have a brand new, newly appointed committee to look at it called a Department of Public Works Building Committee. It has one counselor on it and a couple other residents from town as well as town staff. The two sites that they're actively looking at is the existing DPW site and a site that many people don't even know exists called Ruxton. It's actually up above Puffer's Pond, but far enough away that there's not a problem. And it's on Pulpit Hill Road. And Ruxton actually years ago was purchased for the purpose of DPW. So in the process of looking at how to house DPW, the existing buildings of the town, one of the ones that I know they will be looking at is the North Amherst Elementary School. It's that old school building that sits right on the North Amherst area. In addition to that, there may be some temporary buildings built at some point on Ruxton that would later be used for storage in off-season vehicles. There's any number of options, but it is an active piece of work with the goal that we actually are in the ground and starting to do something within a year. One of the reasons why it's critically important for us to be working at this level and this pace is because there's also legislation before the state legislature, which actually would establish a fund for municipal buildings besides schools and libraries. Right now, there are already funds for that, but this is a proposal that's been out there for about 2 or 3 years. We've testified regularly on it, and the further along you are to have shovels in the ground, the better off you'll be to be able to apply for some of those funds. It's not a law yet, and one of the biggest issues, of course, is going to be how the state will fund that. Meantime, I do want to applaud the fact that we have also appropriated the money to do a study of the wastewater treatment plant. Many of the pieces of equipment in the very large basins, if you will, that are there are not in working condition. And we are actually not just the wastewater treatment plant for Amherst, but we also serve little parts of some of the surrounding towns as well as Hadley. So it's an important regional facility. It was built as a regional facility, and more people, towns or municipalities would like to use it. But at the same time, I can't call it a user fee. I can't call it an initiation fee. But I feel like when a new town or municipality comes in, they need to do something that basically buys into the infrastructure that we have so heavily invested in. So that's an issue that we need to be looking at. The other piece that is that we do an enormous, an incredible job of taking care of protecting our water system. Just on Monday, we approved yet again, with a lot of outside funding, the purchase of some land around one of our watershed areas. We also did replace our Centennial Water plant, and we do a variety of other things to make sure. So Amherst actually is in very good shape from a standpoint of its water supply. Now, the irony for those of us in District 2, particularly those of us that live up in the Shutesbury Road and Flat Hills Road and so forth, we are not on water, town water or sewer. So we're the one district that has the most number of residents. There's only about 5% of Amherst that is not on Amherst water and sewer. But the other thing that is important to know is that in both cases, there are funds that are created by the taxes that people pay or for the service of water and sewer. And much of the money for those kinds of things comes out of those funds. So it's not part of the regular budget process unless it goes beyond that. So it's actually a pretty well managed system. I think we're probably feeling the best about our water system, and we know that there is a serious problem with our wastewater system. Are there anybody else want to ask questions about those issues? Mandy Jo, please jump in anytime you want.
You
Okay,
guys are doing great.
thanks. Amber, you want to go to the ICE update?
Yeah, so I just wanted to give an update on overall in general what we're doing to protect our community against ICE. It's definitely been a concern of a lot of residents, and we as counselors have received a lot of emails and communications about folks' concerns. So I'm just going to share a few updates of some policies that we are working on, and also, hold on. I have a slide, I promise. Just losing my Zoom window. Okay. Here we go. Can you see the protecting the community from ICE slide?
Yes, but
Okay.
you need to make it a slide.
Yeah, I'm gonna make it bigger. Hold on. I got too many windows open. How's that?
That's it.
Okay, so these are sort of like the major like policy things that we've been doing. On March 3rd, our town manager Paul Bockelman came out with an executive order, and I'm going to also be putting this in the chat when I'm done discussing it. The executive order is something similar that municipalities have been doing across the country to protect their citizens from ICE, and particularly in the sense of making sure that ICE is not using municipal property for operations. Like, not using it as a staging area for, ICE enforcement actions, making sure that our town employees are not, serving in the role of an immigration enforcement capacity, which is already part of our sanctuary bylaw, which I'm going to get to in a moment. But it reiterates a lot of our longstanding policies, and it also expands a bit upon them, which in really important ways. The sanctuary bylaw, the second thing that we have is in our general bylaws. It's page 20, and I'll also put that in the chat in a moment. And that basically, we passed that in 2017 as a town. And basically, that says that our police officers will not act as immigration agents, right? They're not going to take on the role of ICE. They're not going to play an enforcement role. They're not going to collaborate with ICE. Essentially, if we have someone in the town in our custody, we're not going to then keep holding them after they've already been, say arrested for something. We're not going to keep holding them so that ICE can come pick them up, for example. So we don't do those kinds of detainers. We don't ask people about their immigration status when we stop them. Very basic things, but things that are very important to have codified in a bylaw. So there are some updates that we think that can be made to this bylaw. So myself and the Council Vice President Alicia Walker have been meeting with the ACLU to look at some of the suggested amendments to our bylaw, and we expect to be able to present something to the council within the next month, I would say. But we will also be asking for community input around those edits and those amendments as well. And that will be a process. So for any bylaw updates, it has to be read twice by the council. It may get referred to a committee. There'll be a public hearing. So there will be plenty of opportunity for public input into that process. And then finally, the resolution calling for federal immigration officers to be held accountable for violations of Massachusetts criminal law was recently passed, and there's a link to it there. And that's basically saying that we are, as a community, encouraging our state law enforcement agencies to collect evidence and prosecute ICE officers that may commit criminal acts in our state. So, for example, if you, assault someone, or if you, and unfortunately to say that in Minnesota, ICE has actually killed people. And so they should be held accountable by state laws if the federal government, and we assume the federal government is not going to prosecute them. So it encourages our state law enforcement officials and our local law enforcement officials to keep evidence and hold evidence if they find evidence of this misconduct, and also to prosecute these officers that may break the law. And so that was recently passed. So those are some of the policy things that we're working on and have worked on. I just also wanted to share this data that was provided at our last council meeting. So as part of our sanctuary bylaw, this data can be requested at any time by three registered voters of the town. And it has 4 different categories of data that we can ask for in terms of our town's interaction with ICE and with immigration enforcement. And so, as you can see, the Amherst Police Department has reported 0 in the year 2025, so that no one's been transferred to ICE custody. There's been no detainer requests, and there's been no U visas. So again, that's something that I think the Human Rights Commission asks for once a year, but any registered voters can ask for that at any time. So the reporting piece is definitely important. And then the other thing that I would just say is that LUCE is an organization that's really been helpful in helping communities prepare for ICE, and it's really important that we don't, put information that may be incorrect about ICE on like social media or like neighborhood groups. Like, we want to make sure that anything we report is verified. And so if folks do think that they might see ICE, would just encourage them to report it to Luce, and I'm going to put their phone number in the chat. And they have verifiers that will actually come out and verify if it was ICE, and will alert the community as needed, so that it can go through that level of verification before we send information out there. There's also other community groups that are active in organizing, and there's a group that I know of that's specifically helping to, create safety plans and advocate for safety plans in our schools. If anyone else wants to share anything about other work that you might be doing on this, I would definitely encourage you to share, because I know a lot of us in our community are concerned about this and have been working on it.
So let me just mention the Luce, which Amber is putting the phone number in. If you see something, the best thing to do is make sure you say where it is, give the best street coordinations, and describe it, and if there's a license plate. What they have found is that if they can get there fast enough, they often basically discourage anything from happening. Normally, that's not the case. And in fact, in Massachusetts alone, 5,000 people have been detained and deported by ICE. Or detained, but some may still be in the country, some have been deported. And that to me was a shocking number. And as you well know, the state legislature is also looking at legislation, and the governor filed an executive order. Are there any questions on those issues? Okay.
I have also one more thing, Lynn, you made me think of that. The governor's office has also opened a portal where you can report any misconduct by ICE officials in Massachusetts. And when we go to the next item, I will look that up and I'll put that in the chat as well. So, I think there was like another really egregious instance of, somebody in ICE custody being mistreated or something of that nature. And there was community pressure for this to be created. So now there's a statewide portal to report any incidents of ICE agents breaking the law.
Right. I want to share a link that is part of our next item, which is basically to tell you about all the committees that we are presently trying to recruit for. And here they are, and tells you how many vacancies there are. And many of these are appointments by the town manager. They go to TSO, they then come to the council for approval. But some of these are actually also, and I mentioned earlier, Zoning Board of Appeals is on here, is not on here, and the Planning Board is not on here. The other one that we are recruiting for, we will begin recruiting for very, very soon, and that's the Bylaw Review Committee. So this is again a requirement of the charter that every 10 years, in the year that begins in 2000 and that ends in 6, that we have to do a review of our bylaws. And we particularly want to review the bylaws this year as it relates to anything that needs to be changed that we didn't catch on the first review, which was done the very first prior to the council convening, and then the very first year of the council. But we want to put an eye toward this, toward climate, and also towards equity and any kind of discrimination. So please make sure that if you are interested, we will also be providing this information to you in emails. But you fill out the community activity form, and that's the link for that is right here. And this was in a recent press release. And then you can track the various vacancies. This is one of the best ways that we get the talent of Amherst to serve the town of Amherst. It is just incredibly important to have these committees populated, and to have them become active residents, have them be populated by active residents of Amherst. So we can put the press release in the chat too. Okay.
Yeah, and we'll send an email with all these follow-up links as well. I think we decided we put so much stuff in the chat. So it's probably the best to deal with it as a follow-up email.
Exactly. We're also recording the meeting, which we'll send out. So are there questions and issues that you would like to raise to the group at this point? And then Amber has suggested, and we try an experiment, and that would be breakout groups, where you talk among each other and come back to us with your thoughts about what kind of things you would like to make sure we talk about at future council meetings. and so forth. We've never done this before. So but before we do that, let's see whether we have other issues people want to raise now. Oh, we never did talk about Heatherstone. I guess we better do it.
Yeah, we probably
Kitty
should.
will come to you in a moment. So, as you know, I'm going to pause for a moment on that request. As you know, Heatherstone has been an issue, and the roundabouts on Heatherstone have been an issue for a long time, ever since they were put in 2 years ago. We have had special meetings with the Town Services and Outreach Committee. And then last November, we had a special district meeting, especially just to this. And then Amber and I were able to attend the Echo Hill North um, association meeting. And we learned something interesting there. 10 years ago, there was a survey done about Heatherstone Road. And what they concluded then, even though before there were roundabouts, just as we are coming to the conclusion now, there's no consensus. Some people want to keep the roundabouts, other people actually want them out of the way today. And, that yesterday would have been soon enough. Or they would have liked it to have been yesterday. And then other people are kind of neutral about it. What we found out is that when they looked at similar options for speed reduction on Heatherstone 10 years ago, there was no consensus either. We did approach that group about conducting another survey. They have so far said they do not want to do another survey. And yet they have some of the best connections. So I guess it was back in maybe February that we met with Paul Bockelman, Amber, and we discussed Heatherstone and other issues with him about District 2, things like streetlights, et cetera. And in the process, we did bring up the issue of signage and the issue that people don't know how you're supposed to deal with a roundabout, especially when they're teeny, like the ones on Heatherstone. And then consistently, we have talked with people and they've said, if you're going to spend money, would you please pave the rest of Heatherstone, because it's now as bad as what the original Heatherstone piece that was done was. So it continues to remain a dilemma at this point. It is not on a list. And unfortunately, what is also not on the list at this point, we are going to see another list in April, is there any money to do something, some other treatment to Heatherstone besides roundabouts? So in other words, remove the roundabouts and put in speed bumps or more sidewalks or whatever the case may be. That is the latest update we can give you. I'm going to ask Amber to do this. I'm sorry, I've had this.
Yeah. No,
I've had the family cold.
take care of yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would just add to that I've been to now, multiple meetings on this issue, and I think the consensus has been that while they are annoying to some people, they're kind of better than nothing. And so we did talk to Paul about it, and we talked about getting some signage in there that will kind of warn people in advance, like, hey, a roundabout is coming, like reduce your speed. We don't want, cars to get damaged because people don't know they're there or they're not expecting them, and so forth. And they should be prepared to slow down and to make the turn. So I think that's kind of what we've landed on. And folks are concerned if we took them out, there would be no mechanism for slowing people down at all. So that, fortunately, I think that's where we've landed. Any other questions, thoughts on
Could I just make a comment about
Yes.
your last point?
Yeah.
I'm Mark McCandlish on Alpine Drive. I don't think they are better than nothing. I guess that's my concern. I think they're really dangerous because they're not true roundabouts, and people aren't, in my experience, people aren't slowing down if they're going straight across Heatherstone. And they have the appearance of roundabouts if people pay attention to the sign. There's a little circular sign there and a yield sign, but I don't think people are behaving like they're true roundabouts. So for me, that presents a danger because being on Alpine, I'm turning left off of Heatherstone, and I'm not trusting people coming northbound on Heatherstone to, if I'm, in what little intersection or what little roundabout area there is, I'm not sure they're going to stop. I'm not sure if they're local, they probably would know to do that. But if they're just cutting through, as so many people do, I'm not sure. I don't believe that everyone's going to stop. And I've seen people just steam on through and really not slow down at all. So I understand that if the purpose is to slow down traffic, I think that's great because people do speed through there. But I think we need to look for another way.
Thank you. Jeff and Marilyn?
It's Jeff. Yeah, I agree with Mark. This the other day I had two converging problems came together. As you know, I think, Lynn, we have now 4 student houses within 8 houses in this little stretch of Auburn Wood Road. Not our problem anymore since we're moving away, but it's gotten really bad. But I think that when Mark goes through those, I'm sure he goes slow and he goes the right direction because we're grown-ups. But the other day I was going through on the right side of one of the roundabouts, the right correct side, and suddenly I find somebody passing me that did the straight one, that did the straightaway and went on the left side. And she did it twice. It just happened to be a very young person who lives 2 doors down. There's no signage. Do I blame her? I blame her. I also blame the town for not having appropriate signage to let people know how they work. And also, as we said to Guilford long ago, they were placed wrong. They're just they're in the wrong place. And he assured us that this was an experiment, and if they didn't work, he'd take them out. And then he told us at the last meeting, well, that wasn't possible, or he wasn't going to do it, whatever it was. So their problem, I agree with Mark, we'd be better off without them. But as you know, Lynn, this is not our problem anymore as of a month from now.
They're leaving Amherst, just to be so
because of that. Just because of that.
Jeff,
Right.
are you gonna take the roundabouts with you?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. We're gonna pack them up.
Amber, did you have something you wanted to add?
No, I was just saying too that, I think to your point, I think that that's why the signage would be helpful to get people ready ahead of time to know that a roundabout is coming. I mean, I've driven, I don't live in that neighborhood either, but I have driven it and, I've gotten used to it at this point. But I think it is when you see something like that, it doesn't look like a typical roundabout. And so maybe as a driver, you don't really know what you're supposed to do with it. And so a sign that clearly says roundabout coming, slow down would be like before you get to it, not when you're right upon it, would at least do something to help deal with the issues that you're talking about. Andy?
Yeah, I promised to come on for my picture, but I don't have time to do that. I just wanted to remind you that the removal of the roundabouts will cost money, and the installation of additional replacements like speed bumps will cost money. And so when we start talking about other issues that we have heard about even tonight, like the other sections of Heatherstone or Gatehouse, there's a competition always for money for everything. Well, I just to let you know, I have been appointed to the Transportation and Parking Commission. So one thing I had been working on as a counselor, I will have some continuity about, and people are welcome to contact me personally about those issues.
Thanks, Andy. The person whose last name is McLean?
Is that Rich or before it said Rich and somebody, but
Hi, yes, that's me.
hi.
So I'm Rich McLean. I live on Alpine. I guess I wanted to say that I'm happy to hear that there's not action going to be taken on removing the roundabouts this year. I agree that they were placed poorly, but I strongly agree with the statement that they're going to cost money, and we have tight budgets and we're seeing the town doesn't seem to be able to maintain level services for its elementary school district. So removing roundabouts would be the absolute bottom of my list of priorities for town money right now.
And I will just say, Rich, that is exactly the kind of you know, no consensus statements we've heard. We've heard statements like we don't want them removed until there is a solution. In other words, another traffic calming solution. We've heard statements like remove them yesterday, and then we've heard other statements like they really don't bother me. And I have to say, I've been there at 8 in the morning. I've been there at 3 in the afternoon. I've been there at 5 in the afternoon, standing, watching, seeing what was going on. And the fact that people don't know how to use these particular roundabouts and don't use them properly is still an issue that does not seem to correct itself. When you get into a much bigger roundabout, I think people do know how to use them much more properly. And we're seeing more and more of them in Amherst. We're about to see another one at University Drive and Amity. So are there other issues people want to raise to the whole group? And then Heather, yeah, go ahead. Kitty, please unmute.
Sorry. There are two things that I haven't heard discussed that, well, there are a lot of things, so many issues. But one is, has the town been contacted? Has the town done anything about the Eversource plan to deforest parts of Buffum Falls?
Mandy Jo, please respond.
I assume, Kitty, you're referring to the just the whole forest clearing of the main line all the way that Eversource is talking about and sending out notices for. Is that correct?
Yes, and by the way, and I have one other topic, yeah.
Okay, so there will be I'm looking up the date now, a community meeting that is being organized by Representative Dom's office on that tree cutting proposal on April 14th in the town room. So at 6 p.m. I don't have much more information from that at this time. I believe we're trying to make it hybrid so that people can attend not by having to go to the town room, but it is on all of those notices people have been receiving with Eversource reps there and all. And Rep Dom's office and Senator Comerford's office should be sending out more information as they get agendas. They're the ones organizing it. So as they get agendas fully set and which representatives are coming, I'm sure we'll have more information. And as I get more information about that, I will send that out to the counselors so that they can distribute it. But there will be a community meeting on April 14th. Unfortunately, it is the same night as a school committee meeting. So hopefully they have been working for 2 months to find a meeting time that the Eversource people could agree to. We had actually hoped to have it in March, and that didn't work out for Eversource. So we did not know about the conflict when they gave us the date until after we had the date and the room reserved. But April 14th, 6 p.m. at this time will be a meeting on that issue.
Thank you. My other question is about, would there be a mechanism for revisiting the issue of whether community activity forms, people wanting to be appointed to committees and applying for that, whether those forms can be open to the public? Because people have noted, I think you were asking people to apply to be appointed to the committees, but a lot of people are very hesitant to do that not because they don't want their names out there, but because they feel that the appointment process has flaws and no one knows who's applied to committees, and they seem to be chosen often for their political opinions.
let me just say, and again, Amber was at the meeting and Mandy Jo was at the meeting. We just discussed this the other night. And it was a discussion that presented both the viewpoint you're presenting and also the viewpoint that the committee that helps encourage people to apply have been interested. And that is that sometimes people don't want their name out there. And so the interesting thing that we face in Amherst is that for all people who apply to committees that the town council directly appoints, which is planning board, finance committee, non-resident members, ZBA, and any other special committees like charter review or bylaw review. When we appoint, the person's CAF is initially not public, but once they submit their statement of interest, which is separate from the CAF, it's where they actually give us a much more background about, themselves and why they'd like to be on a committee. And the interviews are established. Those statements are in fact made public. So for when the council is appointing, our policy is to make it public, but only once the statement of interest is submitted. And even then, I have to tell you, just the other day, for example, we had 4 applicants initially for the finance committee positions, and 1 withdrew the night of the actual interviews. So that happens. The town manager appointments, we don't have that as a policy at this point. And I really encourage both Amber and Mandy Jo to chime in. I believe we did a referral on this one, probably to GOL.
I was gonna say we talked about this on Monday, and I was asking, and Mandy Jo, so you might have to repeat your answer because I apologize. I was like, can we just put this to a vote of the council? Because it wasn't clear to me where that kind of rule would live. Like, it didn't seem like it would need to be in a charter per se. And then I think we decided to refer it somewhere. But I was like, I would just like to take a vote on that as a council, because I think we've heard arguments both ways, and I think that we should kind of just make a decision. But Mandy Jo, can you say where that got referred to?
She's looking at her complicated list.
You're on mute, Mandy Jo.
You have to unmute.
Sorry, this was one of the beyond the charter suggestions, right?
Yes.
Yeah. We did not formally refer any of the beyond the charter suggestions last meeting. We just had a discussion of it, and yes, Amber, you did mention that. What I am planning to do for the April meeting is on some of the items we discussed. Haven't written the memo yet, haven't written the motion yet, but for the ones we specifically discussed, and maybe a few that had that were a little more basic that might fall into some of those categories, or that had some very high consensus, draft a motion that will deal with a portion of the beyond the charter ones to recognize the discussions, to formally take, as Amber was saying, say a referral to TSO on the CAF issue, the roles of committees issues that Councilor Ryan said he was already discussing, the TSO was already discussing and stuff. Same with the finance on budget document details and stuff like that. And then on the charter changes for the special acts that have been not being successful the last 7 years, to make a referral or a request to the town manager to get language from the town attorney. So I'm hoping April 6th we'll have a formal motion to vote on some of those issues we talked about, to get them referred for formal discussion and potential rule changes. And we'll see what the council does with that. But that's the plan, is to not let some of those, that as we discuss them, bring them back at the next meeting for motions, not let them all sit until we get through everything.
Thank you. Are there other issues or comments people want to bring up to the whole group? And then Amber, do you want to proceed with breakouts? And
Yep.
we can try it as an experiment and see what happens.
Yeah, and I think part of the idea behind this is to give you guys a chance to interact with each other as well. And, folks who choose not to participate, that's no problem with that either. But the idea is to introduce yourself. I'm going to put the instructions in the chat. And then a couple discussion questions. What would you like to see improve in the town, in our district? And what would you like to see us do to address the issues and any action steps that you can suggest? And we'll give you like about, I don't know, let's say like maybe 8 minutes, and then we'll bring you back for like closing, follow-up steps, next steps, and all that. Does that sound good?
And we're going to do 2 groups, Amber, so that you and I can each be with a group.
Oh, are we? Okay.
Or
What
do you
about,
want to do 3?
um, let's do, I actually have 5, but I'm gonna
Yeah.
cut
We've,
it down.
we've already
to
lost a
4.
few people.
Okay. All right. We're all set. So folks should get an invitation to join. And then Mandy and Lynn, I will just send you randomly to one, or you can just join one. Oh, see, our group is now reunited in the big room. Hi, Lynn. So people can return at any time. It's they give 6 seconds to return, so I think people will be filtering back in. So we have a few minutes to just to share real quickly things that we learned in our group. So I have a couple things, but I'll wait till everyone's back.
And I have two.
Oh, great. Hi, Ms. Pat. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing well. Great meeting.
Yeah.
Morning.
Amber has brought all of her new technology to it, which I really appreciate.
I really enjoy the breakout group function.
Mary Claire.
Welcome, Mary Claire. It's good to see you.
Thanks. Sorry, I missed most of it, but figured I'd catch the end.
Yeah, I had to quickly move you into a breakout group.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to highlight thank you to my group for raising a couple issues. One of them was the follow-up to the fire at Olympia Place. So some concerns around that, Lynn, that you and I can touch base with. And also the ability to make it easier for small businesses to get licenses and start, especially like beyond restaurants in District 2. And I think that's a great idea. So I don't know if the other groups want to share just a quick tidbit before we sign off.
So in my group, the issue of rent control and the incredible cost of rent, which is driving people out of town. Pat Onabaku has now told me that she has 20 family members living in Amherst, and they're not all by the same last name, but nevertheless. And also Liz Haygood brought this up as an issue, and she's got a lot of her grandchildren living in town. But can they afford to live here, and how and what can we do? And we talked about the fact that this is a state law. There is a state question on the ballot coming up in November about this, and the feelings about it are quite split. But it does require a state law. Austin applied for a special legislation, and it was turned down. The other one was another one was inspections, and I mentioned that the council is hoping to receive a report sometime in the next couple of months on how the new rental inspection law is going. And the other piece was just in general housing. And we talked, Olympia Place came up at that point, and the other housing efforts that are going on in Amherst. And we talked about the opportunity that the Wildwood School site will present to the town to have a robust discussion about future. Okay. Who was the third group?
I had a third group. I
Great.
will answer a question. The rental registration presentation is slated for April 27th.
Great.
So I can answer that question. We believe Rob Moore, our building commissioner, will have the report ready by the 15th. So I don't know how it will get distributed early, but if it's an April 27th meeting, it will be in a packet by the 23rd. Hopefully we can get it in and distribute it out earlier than that, though. Our group, small but mighty, talked about concern about the downtown design guidelines and whether they will, with the hope that they will produce housing, because we need more housing, and that the design guidelines will not sort of hamper the ability to produce housing. We had positive feedback on the breakout groups, so everyone seemed to like the breakout groups. And then just road design. Good thing with the Amity roundabout, that looking forward to having that roundabout. But concern about the lining and the understanding of the lining at Main Street and Amity and Pleasant Street. I know I've seen it myself where cars are driving straight in the turn lanes because it's just a weird lining going on there. And so how do we make that intersection lining and understanding of where you're supposed to be driving clearer was the things we talked about.
Great. And we think District 2 could actually give some people some good hints about roundabouts, given our experience. That's probably a good note to end on. Please make sure, if you are not on our mailing list, that you contact us and let us know that you would like to be. Amber, give your email address.
Yeah, I'll put my email in the chat, and then also we will send out a the follow-up email with
Right.
all the links that we shared in this meeting as well.
And a taping of the meeting as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, and
right.
especially
Thank you,
Amber. Thank
everyone.
you. Like this, you led a great meeting. Thank you, Amber.
Thanks.
That doesn't
Good
take
job.
away from you and Andy. I just thought that Amber did a great job tonight.
You did. We welcome her to the district.
Liz,
Thank
you're
you.
another
Actually,
person
both
I've
of them.
wanted to meet
Yeah.
for a long time.
You
I haven't
both did
met
a
you
good
so
job.
high.
Right.
Thank you, everybody. This is a
All
great
right.
meeting. I really enjoyed
Bye,
it.
Miss Pat, and again, congratulations.
Take
Yeah,
care.
congratulations,
Good
Miss
night.
Pat. I saw your
Thank
honors.
you.
I'm sorry I wasn't there, but
That's
congratulations.
okay. Thank you. Good night,
All right.
everyone.
Take
Yeah.
care.
Good
Good
night.
night.
Yeah.
Night.